Hey, what's up you guys, it's Connor, and today I'm going to be doing a book review on Dry by Neal and Jarrod Shusterman. If you guys don't know, this is a young adult dystopian novel slash kind of apocalyptic novel that follows four main characters in California after California loses access to clean water. One day, everyone has water, everything's going fine. Yeah, there might be some like city ordinances and stuff like that that are controlling how much water you can use because they're in a drought, but one day everything is shut off and no one has access to any clean water, and then this novel explores what happens after that. As I said, this follows four main points of view, but the main character I would say is Alyssa. She's 16, she lives with her family, and her uncle also lives with them. When the water is cut off, which is called the tap out because the taps no longer work, their family immediately goes to the store to try to get water and all that stuff. And her family really represents the everyday family that's just living their lives. They're not going out of their way to like be a prepper or anything like that. It also follows a character named Kelton, who is the son of preppers. His father has made their home into almost like a base with tons of supplies and security, and their family has plans of where they'll go for different situations depending on the apocalyptic event that happens. So their family is, in theory, very prepared for something like this to happen. They have a lot of rules to what they can and can't do once something happens. But Kelton has to watch his friends and his neighbors going through the trauma of not having access to clean water, and that obviously affects him mentally. And that's his main point of view, is following someone that is from a family who thinks that they're prepared, but maybe they're not as prepared as they thought they were going to be. Then it also follows a character named Jackie, who has been living on her own. She is kind of a runaway. She's been breaking into people's houses when they're not there, staying there, and then moving on. She has her own life, and she is in control of herself. She's always looking out for number one, and so when this event happens, she is a lot more resourceful and a lot more willing to do what she needs to do to survive. And then the last character that it follows is a character named Henry, who is the son of two very affluent people. So he lives in a big house, he has lots of supplies, more supplies than the people around him, and he takes advantage of that and tries to kind of emulate his father and make the most out of it and bargain and stuff like that. These four characters all, during the course of a novel, end up interweaving together, and it just explores what would happen to society as a whole, as well as individual people, families, neighborhoods, in the event that people were suddenly cut off from water. As usual with my book reviews, I'm going to go through my pros, go through my cons, give you my rating, and be done. My first pro for this is that it really does a good job of showing and kind of exploring what would happen in this event. It really goes into how quickly people would drop their sense of community, their sense of, I guess, humanity, when a resource is scarce and people are going to have to fight for it. You would like to think that people would kind of come together and try to survive it together and try to make the most of it. That you'd think that people would share and try to like ration, do the smart thing and try to keep as many people hydrated as possible for as long as possible. But that's a very idealistic approach to what would happen, and this doesn't take that approach. So it really shows how nasty people would get and how the social norms and the societal rules that we have created for ourselves would go out the window, and people would just do what they need to do or what they think they need to do to survive. It really gets into what people will do to each other to take what they think that they need. So I really, really enjoyed this book for that. I think that's like the main thing about this book, is how people would react. And I think that this book does that exploration extremely well. I really liked the points of view. I've seen some reviewers not appreciate how many there are, because there's four main ones, but then we also get a couple of random points of view throughout the story. For instance, there's a character named Lila, who is a news anchor, I believe, and she is giving a viewpoint of that she is safe, like she has access to water, she's not going to be going without, but she helps give this story a well-rounded, bigger picture. So I really liked the points of view. I really liked that all of the characters came from these different backgrounds, because in this situation, everyone suffers, but it's interesting to see how people view what they're going through based off of their backgrounds or their means or stuff like that. Alyssa has the highest moral standard, I guess, for herself. So she's going through this event with these other characters, and she's trying to keep all these characters in check and trying to make sure that they remain human, where some of the other characters are a lot more willing to give up their humanity if it means that they're going to be able to access water and survive. Like, Jackie is someone that will do what she needs to do to survive. Her moral line is a lot thinner, I guess, and she's willing to cross that line a lot easier than Alyssa is. And the same thing with Henry and Kelton. They each have their lines that they're not willing to cross, but they'll get up to that line. So I just thought it was really interesting how all of these different people viewed this same event, because they're all going through very similar situations, but their resistance and their resilience is a lot different based off of their backgrounds. So I really liked all the points of view. I understand that it is a lot of characters to keep track of, and you don't get to spend as much time with each one of their points of view, so you don't get as connected with them individually, but I think that it does a good job of painting you the whole picture instead of just giving you one account of what's going on. Also, I partially experienced this story as an audiobook, and I do recommend that. It has a lot of narrators, so all of the different points of view have a different narration, and both Jarrod and Neal are narrators in the audiobook. I think Neal does the exposition, and I think Jarrod is one of the characters, and so I do recommend it. I think that it was really well done. And my last big pro for this is that I do like the messages that it gives. Like, I think you're supposed to like Alyssa the most because she's the one that's holding on to her humanity the most. And yes, she does have to do some things that she wouldn't do normally, but she's the one who's kind of keeping it together and keeping this group from going too far, if that makes sense. And this book really talks about how climate change is affecting people, and how because the climate is changing and like California is a lot drier than it used to be, that something like this could potentially happen. And I think that this book also does a really good job of talking about how people need access to clean water and resources and everything like that without being overly preachy. Like, I never felt like this book was preaching at me or giving me a lecture, but it just brings up things that are good to think about and good to talk about. All of Neal Shusterman's books always tackle like a specific kind of big moral question, and this one is no different. Like, an apocalyptic event where people don't have access to water is so interesting to think about and is terrifying. Like, a couple of his other popular series are Scythe, where characters are living in a society where they've developed to the point where no one dies of a natural cause anymore, so they've assigned a group of people to permanently kill people. It follows the mental effects that would have on that group that's chosen to do that job. And Unwind, where people can have forced organ donation in between the ages of 13 and 17, and the effects that would have. So I really like Neal Shusterman's books for the topics that they cover, and they just make you think. One neutral that I had is that this book is really about the situation and not as much about the characters, so you don't get fully invested in any specific character, you're more invested in the situation as a whole. So I've seen some people not love that. That was a neutral. It didn't affect my reading experience, but I figured I'd let you guys know. And I only have a couple of cons. My first con is that I do think that this was a little slower, and it also might be a little too long. I've seen some people talk about the length of this novel and how it was kind of harder to get through because, one, it's covering a kind of heavy topic, and it's not super action heavy. It's a lot more reflective and a lot more just the characters being super thirsty all the time. So it's not the most exciting novel, which kind of makes it harder to get through the whole thing quickly. That wasn't a huge con for me. The one that kind of hit me was that I think Alyssa is so frustrating because she makes some pretty dumb decisions, I would say. Because she's trying to be so morally upstanding, she makes some decisions that make their survivalship, their like process of trying to survive this tap out, so much more difficult than if she had chosen to do something else. So I was kind of getting frustrated with her during the course of the novel because I'm like, just look out for yourself. Like, I totally understood the character of Jackie. She's gonna do what she needs to do to survive. She needs water, so she's gonna get water. I liked Jackie and Alyssa could be a lot more frustrating because they were kind of I was gonna say at heads, but that's not the phrase, butting heads, because Alyssa was trying to be so morally upstanding and Jackie was like, no, we need freaking to get water, like, we gotta do this. So I found Alyssa could be a little frustrating in that regard. And since this book focuses on Alyssa the most, it kind of brought my enjoyment down just a little bit because I could find her very frustrating. So overall, I really, really enjoyed this. I really liked thinking about this situation, the tap out, and what I would do in that situation. I really like seeing these different characters respond to being in that situation and seeing how that would play out. I did have a couple of cons that kind of brought my enjoyment down just a little bit, so I ended up giving this book 4 out of 5 stars. So that's my review of Dry by Neal and Jarrod Shusterman. If you enjoyed it, please give it a big thumbs up and comment down below if you've read this book, what your thoughts on it were. If you've read anything else by Neal Shusterman, let me know that as well, and we can talk about it because I've read a lot of Neal Shusterman books. Anything else you want me to know, leave it down below, and I will talk to you guys next time.